Hello, welcome to another episode of Executive Suite, and I'm your host, Thomas Braun. And today we're here with Katie Wagner, who is the CEO of KWSM, a digital marketing agency. And they have a very interesting and different approach to digital marketing than most. Katie, can you please give us a brief introduction of your firm?
Sure. Yeah. KWSM is a full service digital marketing agency, but we specialize in lead generation, which means we are held accountable for the revenue we produce for our clients. Most branding and marketing agencies make beautiful things, and I think that's important, but I also think it's important that they work to generate leads and sales, and that's our bread and butter. We've been around for about 15 years, which is a long time in our industry. And we have offices in Orange County, California, San Diego, Atlanta, and Las Vegas. And my team is distributed among those four offices. We've been doing this a long time and I love it.
Okay. So, if I get a job with your firm, does that mean I get to move to San Diego?
Yes, we would love
Yeah.
to have you. You can work in any of those offices.
Um, okay. Uh, what I wanted to ask you about was what I saw on your LinkedIn profile where you talk about strategic content. Can
Yeah.
you please give me some background on that, define what that is for us?
Sure, absolutely. I think when a lot of people think about digital marketing, they think about content marketing, right? Traditional inbound marketing, where you put stuff out on the internet and people find it and click back to your website to learn more. And that's the way we've generated leads for a long time. But what's happened recently is with the advent of AI and the ease of creating a whole bunch of content, the internet has become flooded with content that's fairly generic, candidly. Anybody can make 100 blogs in 5 minutes now. And so there's just this mass of content out there that's not really doing a lot for our target audience. And so, because we're a lead gen firm and because we need to continue to get results for our clients, we really lean into how do we make strategic content that falls into the middle and bottom of the funnel. So that top of funnel content where people just need awareness and general education about things, these days that's being handled by AI. It comes up in AI overviews. And we see that people aren't clicking on websites as much as they used to because they get that information from AI. And so if we're making content that we want them to click on, it needs to be a lot deeper and a lot more strategic in its approach. At KWSM, the way we approach that is through what we call brand journalism, which is telling stories about the people behind the companies we represent. So it's the people that are delivering products and services, it's the people that are using the products and services or that have the pain points. And the content is really rich in things like testimonials and case studies and stats and figures and proof of concept and it's specific storytelling about instances where products and services have made a difference that AI can't create in that more general top line content creation. And so this content becomes strategic because it is intended to convert people who click on it and come to your website, not just to educate and inform them.
Okay. Now, when you're telling this story, are you going to focus on doing it like with a video or in words? How do you approach that?
Yeah, it can be either. Video is hot these days. It's great. Video is popular on the internet, it's popular on social media. So I do think video is a compelling storytelling tool because hearing from your customers directly or hearing from the people behind the company directly is much more authentic and it can have more of an emotional connection. But we can also tell stories in things like blog posts. Sometimes that looks like interviewing our clients and then using their words to craft the post so it resonates of their thought leadership. Sometimes it's interviewing them and posting the interview. So it's actual interactions and back and forth. But I think all of that plays into good storytelling, as does things like graphics and charts and statistics. Like it's really about that authentic information that, again, is much deeper than the high level stuff.
Yeah, I think you are best off with a mix of all of that stuff, probably. just to keep things interesting. I saw a company recently that had a little, 1-minute video on each of their engineers. They got, 10 different people involved in the company. And after you watch the first 2 or 3, just starts to get boring. It's just like, "Oh, here's another engineer telling his story." So I'm just wondering, with a lot of people, they aren't actually necessarily that interesting anyway, and they're not media savvy, and
Sure.
they don't film well or whatever. So what do you do with those people to try and make their story interesting when it's just not that interesting?
Yeah, there's a lot of coaching involved, right? I was a television anchor for 15 years before I opened KWSM. And so a lot of my staff also has TV and journalism backgrounds. And so we do try to coach on those messaging points and on camera presence and all that kind of stuff. But I think going back to what you just said, I think that you can't assume that everybody reads or watches everything on the website, right? And when we're talking about lead generation and conversion, maybe they are just watching 2 or 3 of the videos, not all 10 or all 12, but that's often enough to get them to convert. And I don't think there's an argument for we shouldn't have all that content because they might not watch it all. You give people choices about what to watch and they watch just enough to take the next step. So having videos of people talking about the way they approach their work is a pretty good conversion tool because that level of authenticity and that inside look at things does form connection with your target audience.
Hmm. So with AI, I feel like it's being oversold quite a bit when it comes to content generation, because you look, for example, at AI consulting companies. You
Mhm.
look at their websites, and they're all the same.
Yes.
They have different names, but basically it's all it. You can tell just by looking at it that this was all generated by AI. It's very generic, as you pointed out, and it's kind of boring. And I heard recently in the media that there is some backlash from consumers or the public, that when they find out that something's entirely AI generated, it makes them kind of mad.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
are you then just sitting down and making up all the content yourselves, or like do you just use AI as a prompt to help you get going? That's what I use it for. Sometimes I use it as a prompt, like if you don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Um, but you have to go in and edit things, I think, because people can just tell if something's written by AI.
Absolutely. So, what you're saying is 100% true. There are statistics that show trust in the internet has never been lower. It is dropping because of the amount of AI content that's flooding the internet, and people don't trust it as much, and they're not interested in it as much. And yes, it's obvious to most of us that it's just a generic, everybody has the same stuff. You can make 100 blog posts in 5 minutes, and I can make 110 of them, right? It's just a race to the bottom as far as the effort going into this content
Hmm.
creation. Um, and the way we combat that is I think AI is a tool to streamline workflow, to brainstorm. It can be a thought partner, but we don't use it to straight create content because that content isn't actually very effective in a marketing campaign or a lead generation campaign. And so we might use it to help ideate topics or to help structure interview questions or, to get our creative juices flowing.
Hmm.
And yeah, to create our content, we interview our clients, we do real case studies, we interview their clients, and we have actual humans writing those pieces. So I still employ copywriters, right? I think that is important. I have no desire or plan to get rid of copywriters. And just because AI can make us more efficient and more streamlined in our work, I don't think it will ever replace the skill of that middle of funnel and bottom of the funnel content that is intended to convert. If you just want awareness for your business and generic stuff is okay, maybe that's fine. But I'm here to tell you it's not going to be effective. And when
Hmm.
I look at effectiveness, I look at are we generating leads? Are we getting revenue for our clients? And that requires a much deeper approach to content than just let's create a lot of it.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. Wix, where I host one of my websites,
Yeah.
it now does this automatic. blog creation.
Mm,
And so I'll get an email every couple of days. Wix has a new blog for post for you, and it's very short.
right.
The photograph that they generate to go with it is always almost the same or just a slight variation, and
Yep.
the content is kind of the same.
Yeah.
And it's just totally, it's actually not creative at all. And again, it just reeks of AI when you just have to look at it, and then people just know, well, you put no effort into this, so I'm not going to spend my time reading it.
Well,
Um,
also,
do you
Thomas,
think it
other
causes damage? Like, can you damage your brand by relying on this stuff?
absolutely, I think you can. Like, how many
Hmm.
other businesses are they offering those blog posts to, right? And if you
Hmm.
all post them, now there's no differentiator between your firm and everyone else's, right? Like, it just homogenizes everything, and people don't do business with same, they do business with differentiators, right? They want to choose somebody for a specific reason, and when we all post the same stuff that really isn't specific to our business, we're not giving them those reasons to choose us anymore. So, yes, I would not do that on my own website because I do think it hurts your brand. And I think if you don't have differentiators and unique selling propositions and really unique things about your company to talk about, then maybe that's the problem. Not how are we going to create the content, but how are we going to identify what makes us different? I think that's the place to start. But I would not ever use a generic post on my site because it's really not going to do anything for you except fill a placeholder. And we don't really need that anymore. That's not part of a lead gen strategy.
Hmm. Interesting. So I think humans just need to get their self-confidence back because, you write something and then there's Copilot with Microsoft, and even you're writing an email inside of Gmail. They have their, I think they call Gemini, wants to help
Yes.
you rewrite it,
Yes.
and you sort of think, oh well, that does kind of look a little bit better than what I wrote, but the problem is at the same time it takes on this cloak of AI where now it doesn't sound like you anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like an authentic person anymore. So
Yeah.
I think people have to embrace their differences, I guess, what makes them unique.
Yeah. And your authenticity, right?
Hmm.
Maybe it wasn't the most perfectly crafted sentence, but it was real from my brain, right? And I don't want all my emails to sound like grammatically correct form letters, right? Sometimes I just want to communicate in the way that I communicate. And I think you're right. We're losing a lot of that, right? Maybe it's making us better at grammar, but is it also taking the soul out of what we're communicating a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So we're talking about that strategic content.
Mm,
Now let's let's try and get a little bit more into the strategic part of it.
okay.
What you know what we've been talking about so far has been to a certain amount somewhat generic as well, because a lot of companies are now doing this
Mhm.
and telling stories or whatever. But how do you make that strategic? And why? And how is that going to actually convert? Like, what is it about the content specifically that's going to convert people and generate a new customer?
Yeah. So that's what I mean by strategic, right? When I say strategic content, I mean content designed to convert.
Hmm.
We talk about a sales funnel. We are looking at middle of the funnel and bottom of the funnel content. So everybody goes through a journey, right? It's the sales funnel like this, and there's awareness up here, and then consideration, and then conversion. And AI's got awareness. You don't need to do that anymore. The middle of the funnel content needs to talk about um, your unique selling proposition. That is content intended to differentiate you from other firms, other companies that do what you do. So, in that content, you need to be talking about your process and how you approach your work, your longevity or your track record, your experience. How long have you been doing this? All of those things where if you were sitting with a client and they said, well, what makes you different from company down the street? These are the things you would tell them, right? This is your sales pitch. And you want to craft content around that so that when people go on the internet and they see the AI generic education content at the top, and then they scroll down because they want to learn a little more, now they're clicking on content that really talks about the way you approach things. And I think in the lead gen world on websites, we're seeing a lot more things like comparison charts that compare your company to somebody else or your product to somebody else in the market. We're seeing a lot more pages that illustrate this is our process. Here's how you work with us, or here's how we approach the work. Like that kind of differentiating content. So that's middle of the funnel. Then the strategic content in the bottom of the funnel is all about removing the fear. Give me the information I need to convert. And often that is proof of results. So it's case studies, it's testimonials, it's track record, it's case results. Like all of that content is the bottom of the funnel content. So once I know something about your industry and then I know something about your company and how you approach the work you do, now I need to know how have you done it successfully for other people and what do those results look like? And that is sort of the chain of conversion through content. And so that's what I mean by strategic content. You need to structure that funnel so a prospect is exposed to content at every level of that chain.
Okay. Now, when when people are shopping for anything, they're also worried about the price of something.
Sure.
Um, Now, what do you think about people who are offering a service or whatever? Should they discuss what the cost is, or if they're competitively priced? So, for example, on your website or on other marketing agency websites,
Yeah.
nobody says, "What's this going to cost me?"
Sure.
And maybe if you're a big company, or one of these monopolistic companies that has bags of cash, like the telephone company or whatever, you don't care what it costs. You just want the best agency. But for everybody else in the world, we do care about how much things cost, especially for startup companies. They're going to be very price sensitive.
Yeah.
So should service providers discuss the pricing on their websites, or not, or just tell the story and you wait for somebody to contact you and then talk about it?
I think it really depends on the business and the competitive landscape. So on my website, the reason we don't talk about pricing is because it's custom. There is
Hmm.
no package you're going to buy from us. We create lead gen strategies specific to a business, and it can range widely in cost depending on what's necessary to generate leads for that business. So there isn't a way for me to put that on the website in a way that really makes sense. I need to have a conversation with somebody first. If you have a software product that is very commoditized and you have competitive pricing, then
Hmm.
yes, put pricing as part of that comparison chart, as part of the differentiator content. But
Hmm.
often with service providers, it really depends on so many factors, and there's some discovery that needs to happen before you can price things. And so I don't think price is necessary in those cases if there's a conversation that needs to happen first. When we talk about conversion online, your job is to get the prospect to the table to have a conversation. And so, if you really feel like your low price is an important part of getting them to the table, then sure, talk about it. But in most cases, I think it's the value you provide and not the price that's going to get them into that conversation, and pricing can come afterwards.
Hmm. So one of the things that I thought, because you call yourself a digital marketing agency, but it seems that you include a lot in that. I always thought that digital marketing referred to just placing ads,
Oh,
and
mm,
outbound was sending cold email, and inbound is doing the what you've been referring to as journalism meets marketing or strategic content.
yeah.
So you do all of those things, I gather, and you're integrating them. Can you give me an idea about how they work together, or do you need all three, or are some businesses better off just relying on one? Because I know some
Mhm.
people think that the cold email is not working that well, that they don't get a lot of opening and converting. Some people think that digital marketing is just not working well for them, the Instagram ads and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And so they're looking more, like some agencies that are doing the inbound marketing are saying that's where you should be focusing and don't worry about those other things. But you still do those other things, right? So can you talk to me about that a little bit and how you integrate them, how important those other things are?
Yes. So I don't think we should ever be saying, don't worry about those other things in any
Hmm.
capacity, because our industry and how you generate leads online is changing so much and so fast that it's a new game every 6 months. What worked last week isn't going to necessarily work next week. And so I think at KWSM, we take a very holistic approach and it encompasses a lot of tactics. But first, let me take a step back and say digital marketing is anything that happens in the digital space. So it's email marketing, it's digital ads, it's social media, it's influencer marketing, it's websites and SEO. All of that is digital, right? And so I categorize those tactics into three main buckets: inbound, outbound, and nearbound. And so I think in this quickly changing landscape, if you really need to drive leads and revenue for your business, you have to take a look at all three of those. Does everybody need all three? No, not necessarily, but a lot depends on your specific business and the competitive landscape that you're playing in. And so traditional inbound is content marketing. Put in out blogs, social media content, people find it, you do SEO, they click back to your website, and you tell them more about your business. That is becoming less effective than it used to be because the internet is crowded and people's trust in the internet is dropping. AI content has flooded the space, and now AI is intercepting that traffic. So people do zero click searches. They search for something on Google, they find an AI overview, they read it, and they leave. So that really puts a cramp in inbound marketing because they're not clicking through the website anymore, right? So, in my opinion, if you're only relying on that, you're going to have a much harder time these days. And so I don't think outbound is dead. Outbound through cold email marketing, you mentioned, that's certainly outbound, or like digital ads that retarget you once you've been to a website or they follow you around, banner ads, display ads. I think of all that as outbound too. Like we're pushing the message out to people rather than them finding us and being pulled in. So we do a mix of those things because they often work well together. But I speak often about the fact that I think the future of lead generation is something called nearbound marketing. And nearbound marketing or nearbound lead gen leverages the trust of strategic partners to reach their audiences. Still can happen online, but basically people trust people. And as we lose trust in AI, we lose trust in the internet, we still go back to trusting humans and human referrals, human recommendations. And so if you can find an adjacent business that's not competitive, but their services or products work well with yours and do some kind of co marketing, co content creation with them, then you can reach a audience through a partner they already have trust in. So one great example is what we're doing right now, this webinar. So we're going to do this interview together, then you're going to send it out to your audience and I'm going to send it out to my audience. And your audience already has trust with you, right? And now they're being exposed to me. They are more receptive to me because I'm coming through you. And likewise, my audience has trust with me and now they're going to say, "Oh, well Katie knows Thomas. Let's check out what he has to say." And you're a warmer lead into that audience. So it doesn't always have to be webinars. It could be um, co-creating a research study or a blog post or an ebook together. It could be co-hosting an event. It could be a webinar. Any of these things where you are aligning with adjacent businesses, strategic partners to get in front of an audience that's already warm to them. I believe that is an integral part of lead generation in this new environment.
Hmm. Okay, so there might be a new department for your firm, just finding partners,
Yes.
because I can tell you, when I ask people about scaling their business,
Mm,
we haven't gotten to that yet. Maybe I should ask you about that.
yeah.
It seems that the fastest way is through partnerships.
Yes.
Um, but quite often they're these are partnerships with like industry associations or something like that. So this one HR, excuse me, so I guess an online HR company
Okay.
that I interviewed recently called Pixame. They've got a partnership with the Ontario Hospitality Association, I think it's
Sure.
called. Just like, I don't know what he said, 45,000 members or something, like all the restaurants and hotels joining in. And so they're going to encourage their members to use this online resource where people can submit their resumes and then hiring managers can filter through them very quickly.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a really quick way to scale up, I guess. But what if you're in some kind of a business like my business or your business, and there's no obvious industry association I can partner with? How do I go about finding partners and building those partnerships that will actually have a return on investment and turn into
Yeah.
revenue?
Well, again, it's about finding adjacent businesses that are non-competitive. So I work in marketing
Mhm,
and lead generation.
mhm,
For me, sales consultants, sales trainers, those type people are very um, complementary businesses because when I generate leads, the sales team has to know what to do with them. So often companies that need what I do also need some sort of sales support. And so my company forms relationships with these sales trainers, sales consultants, fractional sales leaders, that kind of people, so that we can refer them into our clients and they can refer us into theirs. Those are very healthy partnerships for us. But also, as I create content, there's a webinar on my website where I'm interviewing a sales leader about, what do we need to do year end to make sure that our sales targets are on track? And he's talking about how do you get more leads in this time of year? And we're really leveraging each other's expertise to help our audience, which benefits from us both. And so I
mhm,
think you're right that we do need a department for that. My firm helps our clients formulate these partnerships quite a bit. We are out there making relationships for our clients so that we can leverage them in this way. And it takes a little legwork. It takes real human connection and building trust, but it can be so mutually beneficial that I think in 2026, if you don't have some inkling of a near-bound strategy or a strategic partner you want to get closer to, I think that it's going to be a lot harder to generate leads because the internet stuff is becoming more challenging.
mhm. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about is with the sales cycle, the
Mm,
length of time, okay? Because you're talking about doing marketing that will have measurable results, so you can quantify as a business. You can say, well, we spent this much money on marketing, and our sales went up, or whatever. Um, Now, I think with professional services, like for example, a marketing agency or a law firm, you can have a very long sales cycle from the first time you start talking to someone to the time when they actually hire you. Um, how long I can that be, and how do you shorten that time?
Well, I mean, I think it can be very lengthy depending on your business and your sales cycle, right? I mean, for me, sometimes I close new prospects in a week and sometimes it takes a year, right? It
Hmm.
vary widely. I think the way to shorten it is by providing really excellent content and having a really targeted lead generation strategy so the people that come into that initial conversation are much warmer leads to begin with. They are looking to convert. But, in lead generation, we usually mark a lead at the time they're willing to have an initial conversation. That is, as long as it's somebody who's actually in your target market, who is the right type of client for you to work with, when they come to the table that first time, that is considered a lead. There's a lot of activity that happens between that and closing the deal that really doesn't have anything to do with your marketing, right? That's your sales process or your um, educational process for a prospect. So by the time they come to the table the first time, they become an active warm lead. And it's a matter of how good are you at that sales process, but also do you have the right content along the way to nurture them? Could you be sending them an email drip? Could you be providing them some one sheets or some PDFs or a deck to talk more about your products and services? Like, what is that sales enablement collateral that you need to have developed to use in that nurturing process as you're talking to prospects? And that's an important part of what we do for our clients too, is make sure that we're bringing the right people into the funnel to that initial conversation. And then we're also providing the right collateral and the right assets for them to nurture that relationship along the way.
Hmm. One cold email expert I was talking to, he thought cold email does work well as long as you have the right product offering. So he thinks that for the people, if it's not working for you, it's because your offering's just not right. Um, how can you, with that email campaign, like, so let's say you have a sequence of emails, um, how how do you communicate with people best to, like, I guess what I'm asking you is, do you know of any tricks to the trade to get people to bite on those on that outreach campaign?
What you're talking about is a very direct response approach where you send an offer and they bite on it. That's not typically the type of company I work with. We're working with
Hmm.
professional services, manufacturing, B2B long sales cycles typically.
Mm.
Um, And I think that it's about education and making a connection. Like, you don't necessarily need, unless you're an e-commerce company, you don't need people to click on the email right away. You need them to read the email and really be absorbing the information. So I do not think cold email is dead either. We use cold email very effectively, but I think it has to be highly targeted and highly valuable. You have to give me information that speaks directly to a pain point I'm having, that proves you understand my business and my needs. And I think that that's where most companies fall short. They make things too generic. They send the same communication, the same offer, the same information to every prospect, and that's never going to be effective. So
Mm.
we like to use cold email in tandem with an account based marketing approach where we are targeting very specific companies as prospects or very specific types of companies and tailoring that content to that individual decision maker and problem and need. And so, in that sense, it's a much smaller send, right? It's a smaller pinpointed approach rather
Hmm.
than bigger blast approach, but we can get very good conversions on that because it really takes the time to connect instead of just canvas.
Okay. So it sounds like you're spending a lot of time then building that list, because it's very easy to take a list of 10,000 people off the shelf. Say, well, here's a list of 10,000 electrical engineers, or here's a list of 10,000 dermatologists, whatever the case may be. But it's quite time consuming if you decided, well, I really want to have high quality leads, so we're not just wasting our time and sending out 10,000 emails. So it sounds like you must be spending a lot of time then going through your resources to build those lists. Like, it can take a lot of time just to build a list of 100 people. If you want to make sure I've got 100 really good people who seriously might become clients.
Yes, and I don't necessarily think you need 100. If you had 20
Uh-huh.
people that really seriously might become,
Mm.
that would be pretty good for most businesses. But I think, yes, it's a quality over quantity approach.
Okay.
Mass blast 10,000 people and hope that a fraction of 1% convert,
Right.
or you can talk in earnest to 20 people and think, I'm going to get 16 of them, 17 of them to the table to have a conversation. And I think they're two different approaches. I believe your resources are better spent in the latter approach, but it can work both ways. It just depends on what your business is and who you're trying to go
Sure.
after.
It always depends. It's
It,
like we ask a lawyer a question. That's their answer to every question. Depends, right?
Marketing's not
It's
one size
true.
fits all,
Yeah.
right? That's
Mm.
why there are a million agencies that specialize in a million different things. I'll leave you with some advice. I think that, um, our environment is changing rapidly, and most people trying to grow their businesses are reaching more resistance in that area than they used to. And so, as we think about wrapping up this year and going into the new year, I think it's really important to take a step back and really think about your lead generation strategy and how are you positioned to grow and what systems and tactics do you have in place for that? Because hoping for the best and winging it is not going to work in the future as well as it maybe did in the past. So I think it's time to really take a hard look at what your approach is.
Hmm. All excellent advice. So, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights with us and your deep expertise in marketing. It's been very helpful, and I'm going to actually adopt some of your pointers in my own marketing. And anyway, I wish you the best of luck with your future endeavors as well. And would you like to say goodbye to our audience?
I would, and I'd like to say thank you. This has been wonderful. I love chatting with you, and I look forward to doing it again.
Great. Thank you. Bye for now.